Welcome in, everybody. Another episode of The Crowded Booth. My name's Bryce Kuhn. Ralph Leary is joining us here shortly. And with SEC Media Days wrapping up, it's time to talk about it. Who is the number 3 team in the SEC? Yeah, not number 1, not number 2, but the number 3 team behind Georgia and Alabama. All that and more on today's episode of The Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Kuhn.
Welcome in, everybody. Bryce Kuhn alongside Ralph Leary. If you can't see him, we haven't heard from him in a while. Ralph, how you doing, my friend?
I'm exhausted, man. It's been a long week, work and everything going on, but it's good to be back on the show for a while. It's been a while, man.
It has been. It's good to be back in the saddle with you here. We're going to talk a little today. SEC Media Days wrapped up last week. ACC, I was up there in Charlotte. So, Ralph, there's a lot of talking points. You saw my post on Instagram. Talking season is over. It's time to play football. Well, talking season is going to continue for us. We're going to talk a little bit today. The SEC, Ralph, I don't think it's any distinction that you have the Georgia Bulldogs and the Alabama Crimson Tide. Those are 1 and 2. Whichever way you want to look at it, Georgia coming off the national title. Alabama's roster is absolutely scary. It could have its own horror feature film. It's so scary. It's really good. That's 1 and 2. We could have a whole show dedicated who you want to put 1 and 2. We may get 2 views. No one really cares. What I think people want to know, Ralph, is who's the number 3 team in the SEC. We're going to talk about that today. We're going to hear from some of our sponsors. Ralph, how's it going to go? Ralph is going to give his number 3 team and why. I'm going to give my number 3 team why. I know they are different because unlike many people think, we actually do talk to each other before we do these shows. So we do have that on deck. But hey, if you're listening on the radio, we appreciate it. If you're watching over on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Ralph, you missed the 500 subscriber mark, so you didn't have to Venmo anybody $5.
Thank God.
Thank God. Ralph went with the silent fist pump there for the radio listeners.
Wasn't trying to throw away too much money now.
No, exactly. Hey, and listen, we are going to be unveiling some interesting but really, really fun things this fall, including a Sunday night. Ralph, are you ready for this? A Sunday night live call-in show. We may hop on for an hour. We're going to take people's calls on Sunday nights to get their thoughts on their favorite college football team's game here in the Columbus, Georgia area, which should, honestly, Ralph, it should not deter. I mean, we're going to have Alabama fans, Auburn fans, Georgia fans. Ralph, we will have some Georgia Tech fans that call in on the show. I don't know how much they're going to have to call in about. We'll have Florida fans. We'll have a lot. It's going to be a lot of fun. We can't wait to launch that here. So what you need to do, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that button right there down there below, and hit the notifications bell as well. All right, so Ralph, I'm going to give you the floor here. Who is number 3 in the SEC and why? We'll talk about that when we come back.
Cook's Place began serving our signature hot dogs in 1985 from a cart on Broadway. We still serve the best hot dogs and scrambled dogs in town at the corner of Moon and Miller Road and at the landings. Our friendly staff won't let you leave hungry. Come in and eat to the beat with our 50s jukebox. Cook's Place, fast service, great people, awesome food. What are you waiting for?
All right, now, Ralph, it is time for you to take the stand. You like that little ad break right there? Here we go.
I was not
Ralph Leary's third best team in the SEC entering 2022. We may have to revisit this a couple times this year, but as of here in late July, who do you have and why? Let's get a detailed breakdown.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of teams you can throw out there. LSU with Brian Kelly going to be, they're going to be a different team than they were last year in 2020. You can
hold up. Don't go into the teams because I don't want you to spoil mine at all. You hadn't said it.
I'm not spoiling anything. I'm saying use the teams that the favorites. There's always the favorite of the SEC every year. There's always that Auburn can be back. All that kind of stuff. I'm going to go with Ole Miss. I think they dominated the transfer portal. They did a huge job there. Lane Kiffin's doing great things there. He's got his quarterback now. He's got Jackson Dart from USC, who's a young gunslinger. He's got Zach Evans, the I don't know how you say what kind of running back he was, and coming out of
dynamic.
High school. Yeah, we knew what he was, but what all of the controversy behind him going to Georgia, going to TCU, and now he's at Ole Miss. I mean, they're just stacked now. They got the tight end from USC, the 4-star. They got his Jackson Dart's number one receiver at USC this year. He built. He lost Matt Corral. He lost his receiving crew. He lost his best running back. It's the same thing as you don't have to rebuild. You reload. So Alabama does it every year. They don't have to rebuild every year. They reload. They get better every year. And not only do we have Jackson Dart and Luke Altmaier, who played at the end of the season in the bowl game for Ole Miss and did a pretty good job, Tyrell Pigromie. If you don't know who that is, people from Alabama probably know who he was. He was a star quarterback in the state of Alabama in high school. Went to Maryland, did great things at Maryland. Now he's at Ole Miss as a grad transfer at Ole Miss. Will I see him play? Probably not at quarterback, but he could be a weapon that Lane Kiffin will use because Lane Kiffin is a guy who loves weapons on his team. He had them last year, kind of the past few years when he was at Alabama, had weapons. FAU, he had weapons, and he uses them to to everything he needs to do. Ole Miss's defense got better, I think. They added some key pieces from Auburn. They got 2 transfers from Auburn, transfers from there. Picked up some other college transfers, but that's what they did. The transfer was free to use. Go pick and choose who you want, and that's what they did. And they rebuild. That's what they reloaded this year. And I think they're going to be a scary team to face.
Yeah, and the only reason that I didn't pick them, and we're going to get in mind here in a second, is, and Lane Kiffin said this at SEC Media Days, yes, talent all over the place. Ralph, you said Jackson Dart, one of the more talented quarterbacks, if not the most talented, that entered the portal this past year. You have Luke Altmaier, who is more than capable of running this offense and a great talent in his own. And I think Altmaier is getting overlooked because of the lure of Jackson Dart. Both those guys could take the keys to this offense. Jonathan Mingo, who's a guy that obviously is coming back for them. If he's healthy, I know he's injured right now. That's a big piece. You talked about Michael Trigg, the tight end / receiver from USC. I think the biggest question for me, Ralph, is how do they fit all in? Like the team chemistry, that's going to be the biggest thing for them because, like you said, this team is talented. They returned 5 offensive starters. They returned 7 defensive starters. And I think, too, Ole Miss has had a knack for having a defense, Ralph, that people say, well, if they only had a defense. And a lot of us point back to the COVID year, the 2022 or the 2020 Alabama Ole Miss game, which the Rebels should have won that game if they could have just found a stop somewhere. But I think they're slowly getting better. Like this is a defense that's slowly getting better. They do have to replace some coordinators. That's going to be very interesting. So I think the biggest thing for me is how do the coordinators take place? We know Lane Kiffin has a big hand in that offense. But Ralph, I'm more concerned about what type of team chemistry do you have? Like you said, you lost a bunch of guys. You brought a bunch of talent in. And Lane Kiffin said it best. How are these guys going to be able to, when we get on the field, what will they look like playing together? I think that's my biggest concern.
Yeah, I completely agree. And so it's I think that's what Georgia and Alabama have been so dominant the past few years with Kirby and Saban is that those teams are so they mesh well together. You got talent over the place that works well with each other. You're not overpowered in one spot. Defense is so equally talented. I mean, you could say some things about the secondary sometimes being they get burnt or they get beat sometimes, but no one's perfect. But Georgia's linebacking crew has always been just so dominant the past few years with Kirby. Yeah. The defense line this past year was so good. The pass rushing has been incredible the past few years, and that's what Georgia is now. Is this defense is huge for them. Offense, you have. I mean, you consider Georgia, almost a running back right now because of who they're putting out at running back.
Yeah.
So Ole Miss is going to find that with their defense this year. I feel like who's going to be our dominant part of the defense. We got to focus around them, but. It's going to be a learning experience. I'm not being biased. So I know this is, I'm saying that first game of the season is a weird test for them. It is against Troy. I'm not saying that Troy's going to go there and win it. I would love for them to, but
I'll say this so you don't have to feel biased.
You don't sleep on them.
I'll say this in all seriousness. Troy is not, and we can just get this out of the way before we start the season because you're going to talk a lot about him. You went to Troy, you love Troy, all these different things. But the bias, I understand what you mean because Troy is not, and I don't want to be disrespectful. They're not a UMass. Like when you see UMass in the schedule, okay, like Troy has talent. They're a good team. We've talked about we like their head coach. I mean, so it's not a program that you can just show up and beat on talent alone. Right. Now, unless you're maybe Alabama or Georgia, you might be able to do it. But your
teams that have been there in a year in year out. Obviously, your Oklahomas, your Alabamas, your Georgias, like that. Those teams you're okay with. Saying they have no chance. But, this is a game you don't overlook for Ole Miss. You don't overlook, schools like South Alabama, App State, what they've done the past few years. Louisiana, down there, it's teams you don't overlook, these small schools, and Ole Miss will not be doing that, which I feel like with them knowing some knowledge with their head coach, as he used to be the linebacker coach at Ole Miss. So now, this is a thing that you prepare for. You prepare for these first games. You got your Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets coming up after that too. So a lot of different tests for Ole Miss beginning of the season. I really think that they start off undefeated for a while, and they host Kentucky. I think the 5th game of the season, I believe.
Yeah.
That will be the one that's like, okay, this is where our offense needs to show it, and this is where our defense needs to show it for once. So
and I like that. I mean, look, they play Troy, Central Arkansas, at Georgia Tech, Tulsa. They do not leave Oxford, Ralph, for the first almost month and a half of the season. So, I mean, that bodes well for a team that's trying to break in. And look, let's just be real. I know some Georgia Tech fans are going to trickle into this show and into this podcast. Your one road game during that period, Ralph, it can be 5 years ago as it was. It's not a tough place to play right now as a road opponent. We just know that it's not. Grant Field is not one of those things. Bobby Dodd Stadium. But I want to say this because we were talking about the coordinators. Jeff Lebby, he's in Oklahoma. DJ Durkin now at Texas A&M. Charlie Weiss Jr. There's a name, Ralph. Charlie Weiss, that we have not heard in a while. Wow. He was at South Florida as the OC, but now he is going to be as the co-offensive coordinator. John David Baker's going to be the passing game coordinator, and the Maurice Crum is going to be the co-DC with Chris Partridge as well. So Partridge is going to be in that co-DC role. Look, Lane Kiffin has his hands in the offense, much like Nick Saban and Kirby Smart really have an influence on the defensive side of the football. Right. It's really Lane Kiffin's offense. I wanted to point this out to you because I did say this. 5 returning offensive starters, 7 returning defensive starters. When you look at that schedule, I like what you said. 4-0, you head into Kentucky. It's a home game. You head into a game against Kentucky. It's a home game. Kentucky is also a trendy pick. Like, people are loving Kentucky. People love what Will Levis brings to the table. That's going to be a good game. You go to Vanderbilt, and then it's Auburn at home, at LSU, at A&M. That's where it's going to make or break the schedule for me.
I think that LSU game is going to be that college game day. If I think how Ole Miss is going to do what they do, I think they went out against all those teams until they get to LSU. I think they're undefeated going into LSU.
Yeah, I mean, if they're 7-0 going to LSU, I don't have LSU's schedule right in front of me. If LSU's a one-loss or an undefeated team right then, that would be – I mean, look, there's a lot worse things that could happen heading into that schedule. No doubt about it.
LSU's got Auburn and Tennessee and Florida before that, but Tennessee's a home game. And Florida State, but I don't know about that. I mean, that's Florida State this year.
Who knows?
Yeah,
Florida State might not make a bowl game.
I want to hear yours because I've been trying to think about it the whole time. I have an idea who you're choosing.
It's almost blatantly obvious. Obvious. We'll hear about more when we come back.
Your soap is ugh, and your body wash is a synthetic detergent. But you're not a dish. You're a man. Switch to Dr. Squatch Natural Soap for Men. For men who build things. Open pickle jars on the first try. Slay dragons. And let their daughters braid their hair. Men who like to feel good and smell titillating. Dr. Squatch takes you places you never thought you'd go. Naked.
All right, we're back here in the Crowded Booth. Bryce Kuhn and Ralph Leary. We appreciate you listening on the radio. If you missed it on the radio, you're going to have to find us a podcast form over on wherever you find your podcast. Ralph just identified Ole Miss as his number 3 team heading into, number 3 team in the SEC heading into the 2022 season. Ralph, I'm going to lead you off with this right here. We're getting into Bryce's 3rd team heading into the 2022 season. I almost feel like it's too trendy of a pick. I'm going with the Aggies. I'm going with Texas A&M. And this is what I'll say right here. You ready for this? I'm going to go close up here.
I want to say something real quick before you start it.
Oh, go ahead.
This was my other pick, but I just had to go with Ole Miss. That's all I had to say.
Yeah, you didn't want to follow the crowd like I do. I understand. I follow the crowd. I get
it. It's not a bad pick. It's a truthful pick, but go ahead. I want to hear why.
Here we go. I got it for you right here. 2019, the number 5 class. 2020, the number 6 class. 2021, the number 9 class. The class that's on campus right now as a true freshman, the number 1 overall class in the country. What am I telling you? I'm telling you that Jimbo Fisher has been building for this moment at Texas A&M. We've seen it with the 2 recent national champions in Alabama and Georgia. How many times do we talk about it? The recruiting's there. This is what they can do. It's just got to come together. For Alabama, we know it's been coming together. For Georgia, it came together last year. The talent is there for Texas A&M to take the next step into the upper echelon of college football. I think it's all there. Like, it's everything they want is there, Ralph. We've talked a little bit about this. You look at what they have at quarterback. I'm going to rattle this off for you. Max Johnson comes in as a transfer, a solid SEC quarterback. Not going to really excite you. He can make some decent plays, but if he's playing, that means his stopgap between Haynes King, who I absolutely love. Ralph, this team lost Haynes King and Connor Weigman. That's Wegman. Connor Wegman is probably the best talented quarterback on that roster, the true freshman. I'm excited to watch him play. But Haynes King is going to be a lot of fun as well. Whoever wins this quarterback job, though, I'm going to tell you, they're going to have a decent offensive line behind them. 2 years ago, they lost 4 starters. It was really detrimental. They lost a lot. This year, Ralph, they've got to replace 2. But what did they do? And this is the part that's different for Texas A&M. We saw Nick Saban do it. Jimbo Fisher saw Nick Saban do it. Jimbo Fisher saw Kirby Smart do it. When you have attrition in your program, what do you have to do? You've got to build legitimate depth. And I'm here to tell you right now with what Texas A&M has is that this offensive line has 2 guys in Fathery and Foster who were excellent as freshmen and should continue that trend towards sophomores. Junior guard Layden Robinson should be better as well. He played through injuries and was still pretty solid at the guard position, but now he's healthy. Redshirt freshman Trey Zune, he was once a 4-star prospect. He's going to replace the guy that I think is pretty tough, Jameer Johnson at tackle. The big task, and this is going to be the big thing that it hinges on for me, because the offensive line's solid. It's probably middle of the pack to the upper top of the SEC. But Kenyon Green, the 2-time All-American guard, that's going to be the tough one. But you have a couple of guys, Ralph. You have 2 4-stars and a 5-star that are waiting to take the spot. And this is what has to happen for you to take the jump as an elite program. You've got to hit on some of these young guys that can come in and play right away. Now, like I said, you heard me say it. I'm not saying that Kenyon Green's production is going to be put up the same amount as his replacement. But what I am saying is that if they can find a guy that can go in there and just be SEC average, Ralph, you and I know an SEC average offensive lineman's playing about everywhere else. Maybe the Big Ten's got some really good offensive linemen. That's a quality player, especially as an 18-year-old for your first time on campus. So I think this offensive line's good.
Have good offensive lines. Let's just be strict
here. They definitely do. I think this is really interesting because Texas A&M has all the pieces, everything you want them to see. And I'm going to we talked about the offensive line. We talked about the big uglies. Let's talk a little bit about the skill position players. Whoever wins this quarterback position, Ralph, is going to be throwing to a good group of receivers with the potential to be great. We all know about Aniyah Smith, kind of what happened to him last week. Look, if he's eligible this season, he's a guy who had 90 receptions and 12 touchdown catches over the past 2 years. He's a guy who is that guy that can turn short to medium routes into touchdowns. Right. Who did that last year for Alabama? Pick one. John Mechie, Jameson Williams. That type of playmaker that can take a slant route 10, 12 yards, and he's gone. The one that I'm excited about, because, look, you always need a guy that can run the underneath route. And what did Alabama have last year? They had Mechie and they had Williams. Mm-hmm. They could run one underneath and one over the top, and you had to choose. It was pick your poison. Right. I think Texas A&M has the deep threat on their roster. It's 5-star freshman Evan Stewart. He had an excellent spring. He is a track star type of athlete, and they've got a great possession guy. His name's Moose Muhammad III, came on strong last year. They've got a solid group, but I think the best athlete, we hadn't even talked about it yet, Mr. A-Chain himself. That guy is unfreaking believable. A great player,
that he was
a great athlete.
Overlooked. And no one really knew who he was until this past year. I'm like, this guy's crazy.
This guy's a world-class sprinter that ran for 910 yards as a backup. Like, you imagine what this guy can do. We saw in the Alabama game what he can do special teams. They have offensive firepower for days. Like, no doubt about it. Now, listen, they bring in DJ Durkin, who was at Ole Miss. He oversaw top 15 units in Florida and Michigan. I think the biggest thing is they got this guy named Antonio Johnson, all ACC, All-American honors as a nickelback last year. He's going to be playing safety. They got a 4-year starter at the other safety position that could be one of the better safety tandems in the country.
Damani Richardson.
Yes. Look at you. You did your research as well. Damani Richardson. Miles Jones, a super senior. He started back in 2020. He had an injury last year. Denver Harris, a 5-star prospect. Deuce Harmon, who's been very good last year as a freshman.
secondary. This defensive line is about to be unreal.
Ralph,
You
don't
bring
even
in
look.
you bring in
Shamar
Walter
Turner
Nolan.
is going to be unbelievable.
You bring in Walter Nolan and Shamar Stewart, the top 2 players in their class.
Mm-hmm.
They are freshmen this year. Walter Nolan, a 6'4", 325-pound defensive lineman. Okay, if most defensive linemen coming out of high school are going to be more agile, strong. They're going to be a little lighter weight, maybe 290, 300 at most.
Yeah,
325 coming out of high school.
It's a grown man.
Is he ready for SEC offensive linemen? That was his question at first. Is he ready for the big step? I think he's ready. Shamar Stewart, 6'6", 272. Okay, try to stop that off the edge. I think he was a 4.95, 40.
4.8 to 4.9 he's been clocked in. I mean it's ridiculous.
6'6", 272. I wasn't running a 4.9 in high school. I wasn't 6'6" either, but
I couldn't run a 4.9 in 100 yards. So look, I mean, this is what I'll tell you. You look at this schedule. The only obstacle for Texas A&M is themselves, because look, it's coaching and development. They have every ounce of talent that you could want outside of Georgia and Alabama in the SEC. Like they've recruited, they've built for this. Ralph, they're playing Sam Houston week 1. Give them a win. Put it on the board. App State week 2. Put it on the board.
Don't overlook them.
I'm not overlooking them. Miami. I mean, they play them at home. So
yeah, and at night in College Station.
I'm giving them a win. I'm giving them a win. Now Arkansas and Arlington. That's going to be an interesting game.
Last year was a loss to them.
Now I say they win that game though, and then at Mississippi State, no one loves the cowbell. No one loves the cowbell, and Mr. Pirate himself.
It's going to be a 12 o'clock kickoff because we all know how SEC is. The big one is they're going to get steamrolled by Alabama out on the road because Alabama wants payback after last year.
Alabama does. And I'll say this. This is why we're not talking about the best team in the SEC. I think they're bona fide the third best team in the SEC because of this. I think they can beat Arkansas. They can beat Mississippi State. Let's say they lose to Auburn. They're going to beat the brakes off of South Carolina. I think they're going to go in there and just blow them up, literally.
Ole Miss beats his own former team. Is that what you're trying to say?
On November 12th.
Crazy things happen in Auburn.
Yeah, it's at Auburn, so who knows?
Yeah.
But if this is a program that could literally go 11-1. Let's play the hypothetical game right here. Texas A&M could go 11-1, play in the Sugar Bowl. If Georgia and Alabama go to the SEC, if the same thing happens verbatim as last year, remember what happened last year? A&M's in the Sugar Bowl this year, like no question about it. If A&M goes 11-1, they're in the Sugar Bowl because Georgia and Alabama will be in the SEC or in the playoff. Mm-hmm. And A&M sitting there. I think A&M's the third best team in college football. They return 6, or I should say in SEC.
You're overlooking Ohio State right now.
Well, I'll just say this. The SEC is college football at this point, so why does it matter? 2022 returning starters, 6 offensively, 5 on the defense. I said that pretty fast. Man, when you have 4 straight top 10 recruiting classes,
you're doing something right.
You're doing something right. You're building for this moment. And I just think that they have it all right here. Ralph, as we wrap up today's show, we only got about 30, 40 more seconds or so. Give me your honorable mention. We talked in depth about both of these programs, but give me your honorable mention. I'll go first since you went first.
Okay.
I'm going to go Kentucky because I don't love the Will Levis hype. I don't, but I think, look, people who know more about football than me, they love them.
Yeah.
Kentucky could finish second in the SEC East. Who knows? I don't know. You tell me. I'm going to look at their schedule quick. You tell me who's your honorable mention.
I'm going to throw LSU out there. I think Brian Kelly builds a good culture down there. I think he's a great thing. He's a good coach. He knows what he's doing. He's been around the block for a few times. He's got talent down there. That's what he needed, and he had it in Notre Dame. He could only get so far in Notre Dame.
He's going to be able to reach new heights with that program.
Exactly, and I think LSU. I don't think they're the third best team in the SEC, fourth best team in the SEC, but they're a team that just don't overlook LSU this year. They're going to be. They have different. It's a different universe down there now. It's a different outlook of things, and it's going to be a fun for LSU in the next few years. I feel like.
A lot of what Kentucky's got to hinge on is Chris Rodriguez, the running back. Is he going to be able to play? A lot of off-field issues with that. But I will tell you this: if he is healthy and they get to play as we wrap up here, Kentucky opens up with Miami of Ohio. They go to Florida, which, look, I like Kentucky on the road at Florida. I really do. I think Kentucky's a better program. Unless we see something out of Florida that we hadn't seen in the past couple of years.
That was another honorable mention for me because new coaching staff, new everything.
Yeah.
That was you throw out some new things about them.
I think Florida's going to finish fourth
Third
in
in
the
the
SEC East.
SEC. I think we overlooked the team, Bryce.
We got to roll the team. We got 15 seconds.
Oh, we forgot Tennessee.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. That's fine. All right, we appreciate it. So long, Rocky Top Nation.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The crowded booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Coon.